Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fired Up, the podcast for marketers working in early and late stage startups. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Morgan McClintic, and today I'm joined by Nicole Pytel. Hello, Nicole. How are you?
Hello, Morgan. Hello, everybody listening out there. I'm good. I'm very excited for this conversation today.
Yes, today we're going to be talking about AI's role in content creation. So not only do we have Nicole, who is our head of content marketing, but we are joined by former journalist Keith O'Brien, who has his own ghostwriting and content creation firm, Total Emphasis. So Keith, welcome to Fired Up.
Thanks. I'm very happy to be here. I know you guys just celebrated a milestone, so congratulations on that. Many, including myself, many started and never really completed podcasts out there in the world, so you guys can rest easy. You've made it.
Thank you. 100 episodes. Hopefully we get a little bit better at it as we go through. But yes, thank you. I really appreciate that. And thanks for your time today. So this is a great topic. I think AI is a wonderful technology. It immediately had an impact on content creation. But here we are, sort of 18, 24 months into it. And we've seen the highs, and we're starting to notice some of the areas where AI is less good. That is the topic we want to unpack today. So just as we get into this, what is your general view about the impact of AI on content creation? Has it made it better or has it made it worse?
So probably not the first time today, I'll say a little column A, a little column B. So no one doubts that you can go to ChatGPT, to Claude, to any one of these AI chatbots and ask it to write you something, and it will write something. And I think it's getting better at avoiding hallucinations. We can all remember the first early days, someone keep asking it the year, and it kept insisting it was 2025 when it was 2024. So you can go to ChatGPT, ask it to write you an 800-word blog. You have to check all your facts, but assume it creates something. But it creates something that anyone can create using the same prompt. It, I think, has a lot of sort of lyrical flourishes that don't sound quite right. Sounds very milquetoast. And I think it doesn't get weight of importance. Like maybe all the content's there, but it's not really oriented in a way. And I talk to a lot of writers about this. Some of them use it more than I do. Some of them use it less. We're all sort of aligned that what it spits back to us, and maybe we're biased because we're worried about our jobs, but it never just seems quite right. And so what do? You rewrite it, and then you start wondering, is this taking longer to rewrite it than if I just started? And then there's the more philosophical question of what exactly is it that I'm doing if what I'm doing is editing a first draft from a robot? Those are weighty questions that, I think if anyone comes away from this conversation, I hope they realize that I personally am contemplating all those things. But if you sort of put me on a spectrum when it comes to AI for content creation, I'm very nonplussed about it today.
Got it. And it makes total sense. Yeah. I mean, it is a little existential. Like, I'm editing a robot. Like, what has happened here? What about the thoughts in my head? Totally get it. So I feel like as writers, we all have like our own creative process. There's a way that we brainstorm things. There's always kind of like some aha moment when we're doing something totally random and we know exactly how to tie things together. I feel like we're getting a sort of parallel to that in terms of an AI process. I feel like writers have very different ways of how they're incorporating AI. So I'd love to know, how do you use AI in the content that you're producing, aside maybe just from editing the robot?
Yeah. So I think it's helpful to one thing that for clients where maybe the domain expertise, I'm ramping it up. I do use it for research, so lobbing questions to it. I would sing the praises of AI if it could return back to you what I consider to be first level sources. So anyone who spent time on the internet in our world where we have to support our points through data has been through the Ouroboros, or maybe better referred to as the nesting doll scenario, where you find like 68 e-commerce stats that'll wow you. And then there's a really interesting stat. All right, whose is that? You click on that,
Yeah.
it goes to another article from 6 years ago. I've tried very hard to get ChatGPT to give me 5 stats that are relevant to what I'm writing, and not like, hey, I have this idea and I want to prove it. Any stats related to this topic I'm talking about, but limited to Deloitte, the Wall Street Journal, IBM, McKinsey, and it really fails to do that. But in theory, I would love for it to help me, because part of it is search is really disintegrated in recent years for whatever reason. I will use it occasionally to come up with headline suggestions, but where I'm still bullish on the human form is it will give me if I ask for 7 recommendations, it'll give me 7. I just know right away which one is the closest to it, and I know right away how I need to change that to be the right headline. And that's something hard to describe, and maybe it's a little bit
Mm.
ego, but I fundamentally believe you can't. I find it hard to believe people can just start becoming great writers by being good prompters or having the latest and greatest tools. There's something in built up experience and just, I don't know, the ineffable literary mind, not to sound
Yeah.
too self aggrandizing, but there are things that it produces that I just instinctively know what I want to do with it, that I think other people that are just like, oh, AI is going to create this new career for me, will struggle with. I could be wrong about that, but that's how I view it. So, research a lot. This is less about writing or content creation, but just areas of my business helping me with project management. One recent case is I gave it a lot of qualifiers and a bunch of names in my database and asked to lead score them, people that I have some connection to but haven't reached out to, and prioritize how I reach out to them. But then I could ask it, hey, write the email for me. But then again, it's like, what am I even doing? If I can be bothered to write something personally to them, asking for their business or to talk or whatever, then I would hope that person receiving it sees through it. So I guess what I'm getting at is for client work, it's a very rare use case where I'm really incorporating it in the deliverable that I'm producing for them. But I am genuinely curious about it as a tool for content creators. So I have my little kind of skunk works where I ask it to
Mhm.
do some things that are unrelated to the work that I'm getting paid to do for clients, because I want to understand that. But as of right now, I have this connection with my clients, unless they're like, hey, we want you to do this and we want you to use AI. But for the most part, I think they're hiring me for my expertise to write something, starting with my brain and finishing with my brain.
Yeah, I mean, there is an expectation that you're, in terms of, I guess, overall productivity for all of us, that we are going to use the tools on hand to be as productive as possible. And that's going to be reflected in the time it takes to deliver that piece of copy and the overall price, I guess, too. And so you've got to leverage, I'm not writing all these things out with a quill. I am actually typing them in. So I'm using the tools. I like your comment about research. I think a lot of people feel like it's great at research. And certainly your own experience can be sort of up to a certain level of fluency with a topic and ask all the sort of dumb questions. What's the difference between this and that? So that you can then approach the topic with some level of confidence. I think it's brilliant for that. But I like your comment about, hey, I want to earth these arguments with some data points, and those data points need to be real. And the citations that ChatGPT uses and Claude uses are a third from media, but also roughly a third from other websites. And so you
Yeah.
do And it loves the listicles, right? It really loves pulling from those 60 facts about demand generation or whatever it might be. And then you do end up just chasing down and down and down the rabbit hole of where did this first come from? Where's the canonical?
Many times it appears to come from nowhere.
Right. And you're like, okay, this is the perfect, because it'll find the perfect statistic, but it'll be from a terrible source. So it's not hallucinating, but somewhere on the internet, there is a data to support every argument, I guess. Do you think that problem has been getting worse as people sort of gamify these citations, or is it getting better because it has this sort of fan out approach and it's sort of trying to build consensus?
I definitely think worse. And not only was I a former journalist, I was also editor of a publication many listeners should know, PR Week, run now by Steve Barrett, who replaced me many years ago. Shout out to his longevity. So I like to think about publishers and their strategies because it used to be a big part of my life. And there are these sort of vaporware websites that just chase this citation game. And I just wonder, I'm sure they're making some money every time someone clicks on it and like groans and leaves. But it just seems like there's better ways to live your life than doing that. But yeah, there's been a lot of incentive with the search engines that I think is going away. So maybe, but I guess as I think about, there's a lot of reasons I use AI that I would use search if it were better. I think it holds a lot of promise to just help you find the things that you need. But even AI in all of its computational glory still gets lost as humans do. The other thing about the research, I think it is very good at research, but I'm also cognizant of what I like to call the sort of elementary school problem of studying for a test and passing that test, and how much of that information do you retain? In writing, in research, there needs to be a little bit of struggle of reading things you don't quite understand instead of uploading a bunch of documents and say, synthesize this for me. Will that help me write something? Will that help me remember something? Will that help me understand something in the moment? Yes, but I probably won't retain it as much as if I put in the hard work and read the whole white paper. And so, where I feel most strongly, because a lot of this is of the moment, there could be great leaps. I know that a lot of people think ChatGPT 5, Model 5, or whatever you call it, was a little bit of a swing and miss. And so there's questions of whether there's plateaus or the leaps before were so good and we're in a sort of fallow period. Regardless of that, making a lot of predictions about AI, you could look very stupid in 6 months. So I try to be cognizant of that. But if I have a sort of grounding principle, is the idea that AI making things easier for you comes with some cost. And I think some of that cost is, do you really understand the things that you have exported to it to help you understand? And in some cases, yes, like maybe it was produced in a way that encodes in your brain and you suddenly get. In other cases, you're going to wake up 6 months from now and have to ask it the same question because you do not remember and you did not get it fully.
I think that's a great point, especially talking in tech where clients are coming to us because we have domain expertise. And if we're kind of just learning things to pass the test and then we all forget it, I think back to 11th grade math class, I have no idea what I learned. Are we really sharpening that domain expertise? Are we getting better at that? I think that's a really, really good point. So we've talked a little bit about where you lean on AI. Where do you absolutely, truly avoid it? Whether it's because it's a time suck or the quality's not right. Like, what are those situations where you're like, that's just a hard no, I'm not using it for that?
Yeah, I'm not using it to do a first draft of, I never say never. Like, I'm sure there's a situation where I did, but I find, and part of it is even if it comes to me, like in a way that, letting aside the ethical issues of passing that off as my own, that I thought it was well written enough that I wouldn't be super embarrassed to say, I'm sending this to you as something that was part of me because I wrote the prompt or whatever. I just look at it and I'm like, I don't see it. I don't see this being a work of art. That I just find too many things in the margins that don't make sense to me, that feel it's missing the point. So yeah, there's certainly, I run out of steam on a thought and I interrogate ChatGPT to like help me think about how I finish that thought. Like there's again the margins. I do have one client that they have said that I cannot use AI for writing for them. And I created a little bit of we were talking before about the importance of communicators. I think I communicated the point very well. Regardless, once you say something, it goes on the internet. Someone took it that I was being like a Luddite, that I was so happy that I never use AI. And so finally a client got my mentality. That's not it at all. I thought it was fascinating, and I'm surprised more clients don't do it, because this is an agency. So they are sitting in between me and the end client. And they believe strongly that they are paying me to write something. They're paying for my expertise and my services. I thought that was really interesting, and I said so on LinkedIn. So that's one client that I don't use it for any writing, as it's contractual.
No.
I can use it for research, but I think life in AI is about all these test cases. It's not a bulk of my work, so it's a nice little sandbox. What does life look like without AI working on this client? But then other clients, if I get stuck in a paragraph, I'll interrogate ChatGPT to help me figure a way out of it. But I don't see my business really making sense if everything I produce starts with a 800-word ChatGPT regurgitation of a prompt that I created. I feel like over the extent of my career, it will take me more time to create it. I will lose parts of myself spiritually, parts of myself academically, and I don't know what 5 years from now that looks like. Now, if AI suddenly becomes the accepted chronicler of life and everyone uses it and my job functionally goes away, I'm always cognizant of the fact that a lot of people believe more strongly than I do that it's ready and it's useful for that function. So life in the world of AI is a world of experiments.
Yeah. A lot of people can't tell whether content has been written by AI. And in fact, a lot of linguistic experts is actually worse. They actually think it's more human, it's being produced by humans more often than the general population. And so you can tell because when you write, you're a journalist, right? And this is what
Yeah.
you do for a living. But I have had it argued to me that the sort of value of content is sort of heading to zero. I'll just have ChatGPT write that blog post or my website. People have said that to my face. I'll just get AI to sort of churn out the draft. How do you respond to that?
So I truly don't understand the motivations, and I don't understand the people that in a draft of a post that they used AI for and are saying that this was AI and I corrected the mistakes and I added a little bit of my. I'm always curious what it is they are trying to convey to the people receiving that. I assume they are trying to convey, I'm on the vanguard. I'm not afraid of technology. But why would I want to read something from someone that did not write it? Like, what is the point of a thought leader that is churning out content that I guess they're going to say that they did the prompt? I know there's a lot of people that have invested a lot of time, and there are tools that you can make your own like me bot where it knows and I'm sure that's good. And I don't know what to call the output of that. If that's all your output. Again, like, look, an executive who's really busy, hopefully they realize the value that companies like ours produce and they have that support or they have internal support. Like, I am not judging an executive who's like, I have a really good prompt. It's going to create a post for LinkedIn or a blog. But like, if you're just committing to everything that I produce from here on out will be me prompting an engine, whether or not it's an engine that's trained to be you and is regurgitating the things that you have said previously, I just don't know what you're conveying to the world. I don't know what the point of it all is. And that seems like it's veering a little philosophical, and maybe that's true. But also, you are maybe winning the battle of I am a forward thinker, but you're
Yeah.
losing the battle of you should read the things I create, because you're openly admitting that ipso facto, you're not really creating them. You're creating them in tandem with a machine.
Yeah, I think it's a fine line, right? Because people can't spot AI content. A lot of people can't. When they find out it's written by AI, their trust in that content goes down significantly. I take your point that busy execs might not have time to sort of codify their thoughts, or maybe even the skills to do it in the same way as somebody who's a trained reporter. By the same token, though, in the early days of blogging, there was a lot of angst about when we were all being authentic on the internet and writing. You can hear straight from my mind to yours. There was a lot of angst about ghost-written blog posts, right? Somebody else has written this. Actually wasn't the CEO. It was their PR department or their copywriter, or whoever it might be. And now we're totally fine with ghostwriting. I've ghostwritten bylines. You do it. We all do this. And it's fine, because the assumption is, okay, they didn't write the words, but the thoughts and the vision were theirs, and they've reviewed it and they've blessed it, and it's sort of gone through, and they're willing to put their name to it. How is that different from, instead of us ghostwriting it for that exec, ChatGPT doing the same thing, as long as that person is happy to put their name to it?
That is a extremely interesting question, and one that I'm embarrassed to say that I haven't spent a lot of time.
Oh, no. Well, I don't know that there is a clean answer to it.
You get my unvarnished, off extemporaneous answer to that, because you're exactly right. Like, this is going to make me go off and ponder life for a bit. It's funny because when I say what I do to the parents of my son's soccer team, or someone in a different industry, not even talking to blue collar, just people that are in office jobs but far away from the Marcom's function, they will ask me some iteration of the question like, is it really the person then if you're writing it? And in reality, the work is much better the more the executive works with you on it. But also, I pride myself on, being able to take as little of the executive's time as they need. Like, that's a value add that I provide, because I think I can synthesize quickly just talking to someone how they want to come across, what their main points of interest are. So I'm not I'm not stalling for time. It is a fascinating question. And, I think there's certainly much closer equality between something that a executive writes on their own and working with another human. But there's not a huge ravine between that and AI. So all the more reason why I've had my little caveats in this conversation. If all of the people I work with are saying, I don't see the difference between the two, I need to be prepared for that moment. I do think you set it up nicely. I think there's a lot of work that goes into understanding the executive that I don't necessarily think ChatGPT gets to. It's like you can put in tone qualifiers for a prompt, and it never gets it. Like, if I were to spend, I don't know how long creating the perfect prompt, everything I know about an executive, I guarantee what it spits out will be far from what I would create, and far further away from what that executive would want.
I do think philosophically at the moment, and from the research, where people, when they understand that this was written by a bot, their trust in it goes down, that it's not going from one human's mind to another through the medium of a written sentence. I think there's something in that. It's hard to pin down, but is very meaningful to people and their trust in the arguments that are being made, that if they've come from somebody else who's done the work to understand this issue, and they are then writing it down for you to communicate it to you. They're standing on top of the mountain and they are declaring it to you. That is very different than it's just being probabilistically spat out by an algorithm. That just doesn't feel quite as fulfilling to me as a reader. There's something in that part of it, not that it was ghost written, but the fact that it was written by a computer that I think reduces people's trust. But I agree with you. We may become inured to that over time in this.
It's also that you've been in the ghostwriting, the interviews with executives. You're the one asking the question. The chatbot might ask you questions based off a prompt you give it, and tied into what I wanted to talk about a little bit earlier. Like, I'm always contemplating my sort of skill level as a writer, where I would put myself. And on some days, I'm much more down on myself as a writer than others. Yeah, you guys all get that. But when I'm pitching people for business or I'm talking to people, I think quickly on my feet and I ask very interesting questions. I think that is my superpower. And I pride myself on not every meeting, but at least 1 in 3 meetings, I get some variation from the executive I'm talking to. I hadn't thought about it that way. That's an interesting point. I have to think about that. If I'm not doing that, I'm losing my fastball. And that's not something Chat GPT or chatbot does right now and may never do. And that's where being a ghostwriter is not, I think people not in this world think it's stentorian. It's the same thing as I think good consulting. Like, you got to challenge, you got to push back. You're going to get some edits from an executive that you fundamentally disagree with. And what do you do with that? We learned through some horrific stories just how sycophantic chatbots are. They are not going to tell the exec every edit, this is brilliant, sir, ma'am, thank you. Thank you for making my piece better. We have to sometimes stick our necks out as content people to say, I think there's a better way. You know this world better than I do, but take it with a grain of salt that maybe I understand how to communicate what you're trying to say. I know what you're trying to say. I don't think the reader will. I can bridge that gap. Again, this is why I was really happy to do this podcast. I will probably come away from this conversation thinking, because of some of your great questions. Sorry, I'm not being sycophantic chatbot right here, but you've asked great questions, and I've come away probably with, as I said at the onset, some thoughts that are a little more pro AI than maybe what I came into, but getting into the margins, some of the things that I think we humans do exceedingly better than AI that makes us better partners for executives than I was thinking about. So, as with all of this, I will go away and say I'm no closer to a exact opinion about this, but I've gotten more material.
It's a lot to ponder. And I think you bring up some really good points about really pulling some stuff out or throwing a bit of a curveball in terms of a question. Because you're right. If you're working with somebody who wants to be a thought leader, they need thoughts and they need new thoughts. And as things change and evolve, their thoughts may change and evolve. And with AI, it's this sea of sameness where it's trained on what it's trained on.
Yeah.
And it's going to spit out the thoughts that it's going to spit out. And it's going to tell you that you're lovely and you're brilliant and you're doing a great job. And it's never going to challenge you and it's not going to give you that human nuance. So is that where content creators can really shine? Is that maybe one area where they can shine in this AI era? Because I feel like there's a thought of, well, all you guys do is sit around and write stuff. You're little typewriter monkeys and you crank stuff out. And like AI can totally do that way faster than you can and way cheaper than you can. So, like, is that where the humans shine? Like, human to human? Is that where a content creator can really say, here's my differentiator and here's what makes me better than AI?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. One is just thinking about Sam Altman is on so many podcasts. He has his own blog. I don't recall reading something that he said he had ChatGPT help him write it. I'm not saying that's not the case. I think he's really, and I'm acting like he pauses and thinks a lot in his interviews. A lot of the AI people do, like, they're cognizant of the power of their brain of thinking. And I think they value that. Like, I'm sure you guys do. I have clients that are deep in the AI space. And if they were convinced that we're ready to replace writers, they're closest to the source. They would know, or they would feel the strongest. I do think all of this, like talking on a podcast, having an interview with a executive, sitting there staring at a screen saying, I don't know where to begin. They're all fundamentally human endeavors. They sort of, the sitting at the desk is very solitary, but for the most part, we want to talk to people. We're social beings, and there are definitely people that have found a profound connection with their chatbots, some horrifically too profound. And that's
Yeah.
frightening. I think we're all capable of being under the swell of some new technology or anything. But I just think it's going to be very hard to erode this social connection that we have. And it's going to be, and that's just, humans living life, but also in work. The work is meaningful when there's a struggle through it. And the work is meaningful when you and someone are collaborating. And it doesn't feel the same collaborating with a chat GPT or GPT. I'm Kleenexing LLMs. It's the top of mind one, but LLMs, like, again, I think if you're like, I can replace all the people I'm working with, I can replace all the interconnectedness with an LLM. I don't want that for myself. And I go to work every day just trying to produce value to my clients. And to your point, Nicole, one of the best ways to do that is just being more curious and more contrarian, or any of those words that describe, like, let's have a conversation, and not a conversation where I'm telling you everything you want to hear and I'm just retrieving what you asked me to retrieve. Like, let's really talk. And at the end of it, I fundamentally believe the content that comes out of that is going to be much better than run through an LLM.
You raised a great point there. So you've talked a little bit about using AI in research, the first draft. Then you talked about editing. Now, ChatGPT is not going to push back on the edits from the person whose name this byline is under, let's say.
Yeah.
Often, those edits do not make the piece better. They might correct a few. They often make it more vague. Sometimes they're brilliant, but often they're not great. And so often in that process, you'll push back and go, no, I'm not accepting that. This isn't as good. You should just trust me because this is what I do. So I think that part of the process where, particularly if you have multiple people editing a document, somebody needs to, which is, we don't love, but that editing process is really important and is not something I think at the moment that AI can do at all.
Yeah. And you will get someone, especially if I find less of it if it's, 2-3 people in the edits. But once you start getting that Royal Rumble, you get someone who will, in the middle of it, say, I asked an LLM and this is what they said. And
Yeah.
I often find that derails. That's not additive. So, again, this is a sort of hard won experience of like, how important is this edit?
Judgment.
Where am I in the relationship with, like, I get asked a lot, as a former journalist. Now, the PR universe is small, but I carry many years from now, so probably not as much. But during the time where I was editor of PR Week, and I was pretty young and I was just learning the industry, but I carried, a little bit of a weight in that industry because the publication I edited was important. And so I get asked a lot, like, if I miss having my name on a byline, like, if you didn't know ghostwriting was a thing, you'd be, where did that writer go? I don't see a lot of work from him these days. So I'm asked, like, whether I miss that. And I don't. I love what I do, and I don't have a huge ego about it. So that carries over to editing. Like, I am willing to fight for things that I know will make that executive's final product so much better. I also know that there's no one true perfect message for anything. And so there's all of these calculations again that, like, how long would it take to code a LLM to emulate you in that, if you really think about it, thousands of data points that go into a snap yes or no, I'm going to accept this or I'm going to push back on it. And that's where I just like, again, the piece I'm working on, the piece that I'm being paid to do is a big part of this. But I truly believe in the relationships where I have a very strong connection with the executive. I'm providing so much more value just
Right.
by being, everyone likes being asked questions. I love being on this podcast. Like, I ask questions, and if I've done a good job, I've done my homework, I find a question that makes them contemplate. I won't go as far as to say, like, I've asked such a brilliant question that they launched $1 billion product, or they
Yeah.
pivoted and everyone became a billionaire. But I do believe that in those right situations where I really know what I'm talking about, I produce a sort of under the radar, hard to quantify value that goes far beyond writing. Because what are we journalists? Journalists are curious about questions, curious about finding an answer, and really interested in how you communicate that answer so that the person you're communicating to knows what to do with it. Those are all high valuable interpersonal skills that I hope we're still valued for years from now.
Well, it sounds like even with the deepest of AI clients, they still value that. You're working with them, we're working with some of them. And you're right, they're the boots on the ground. If AI were capable of taking our jobs away, they would be the first ones using it. So I gotta ask, all of this, everything that you've said, what do you think about OpenAI posting a job for a content strategist, an actual human with experience that comes in and figures out what their strategy is going to be, what content goes out into the world? And I read the job posting and I didn't see anywhere of, well, you've got to be a great prompt engineer to
Yeah.
figure all this out. It's like, no, you've got to come up with the messaging and the calendar and the frameworks and all the things, and there was no mention of AI doing it. So I gotta ask what you think about that.
Yeah. We're all, whoever gets that job, we're all excited for our fellow writers for hitting that home run. I will answer that. There was also a job for Salesforce, the CEO, like CEO communication, that was also a very high dollar
Mhm.
ticket. And so, got a lot of guffaws from people. There's still very much a mentality in a lot of professional classes outside of Marcoms where it's like the mentality is still get your intern to tweet. I think it reinforces what I've been saying. There's a ton of value in what we do, and content is the output to what it is we do, which I think just really gets philosophical about what is this company? What does it want to believe in? What does it want to say? And a lot of times the executive has a good idea of what that is. Some of them struggle to verbalize it. Some of them can verbalize the like pithy value statement, but how that goes off into the world and lives everywhere. That's someone like us that I think really excels at it. And I love what I do. I love the makeup of my job because I feel like I can be of value to my clients more broadly than I could in a corporate setting, where I think paradoxically, a lot of organizations are very wedded to this is your role. Your role is ghostwriter. So you ghostwrite things. Like, you have a good idea for a product or a way that we organize ourselves better. You just have to go through hoops, and it's not worth it at the end to make that impact. So I'm hoping these high, like, on one hand, it may be a little crazy for the job description to be that much money, although
Mhm.
I support anyone in our chosen field of work to getting that bank. I think it reinforces that whoever takes that job, their remit is going to be pretty broad, and they're just being valued at, like, it's probably going to be an absolute obstacle course to get that job. They're probably going to go through 50 interviews or something, but whoever they pick, I think will make a huge difference for that company. Same thing with the Salesforce thing. And maybe in the next couple of years, we collectively in this chosen line of work, and I would say PR is part of it, need to think about what we start calling ourselves to maybe more reflect the greater value that we do. But then again, you maybe lose people understanding exactly what you do. But every time I talk to someone who's a writer or an artist or has this concept of taking nothing and turning into something, I always find them really curious outside of their chosen line of work. And I think if they apply what they know to various parts of the business, it's absolutely money well spent.
Yeah. So just as we wrap here, what advice do you have for brands and for other sort of content creators when it comes to AI and sort of how you think it'll develop over the next few years?
So, number one, and I feel like we were talking earlier about communicators getting a lot of scrutiny if they miscommunicate something because that's their job. I feel like I've done a good job communicating that I experiment with AI. I see lots of value. The core thing that I do for a living, I do not see it replacing that today. And I don't see it even being a good value, leaving aside the philosophical challenges of using it to write all my stuff. Experiment, number one. This could all go away. The energy problem reaching a ceiling that suddenly the cost is, no one knows where this is going, but anything that is like, I never bought one, but I tracked the whole NFT movement. Like when that started up, I was cognizant of it. I made a sort of right play that I didn't think it was sustainable, but I'm always curious about this stuff and I always want to try it out. So experiment with things. This month paid for the ChatGPT Pro because someone I respect was like, you can't have a really strong opinion about what these models can do if you're not paying for an advanced one. I thought that was very cogent. And so I'm really working on building out a smarter lead prospecting project management flow. And it's been helpful in a lot of regards there, filling in gaps on data, helping me think about organizational structure. So definitely experiment with it. I believe strongly in our value. So executives, try having GPT write a byline and compare it to what someone gave you. And, if we are constantly losing that battle, I'm a realist. Like that means something has to change. But I believe if the executive is really scoring fairly, we will win those far more than we won't. And, I think there's a lot of conversations out there about practical and technical uses of LLMs, what they're good at and what they're not. I encourage the executives I work with to share their more philosophical perspectives on AI, even if they have points that I might disagree with. I've certainly written things that don't align with my worldview because that's the job that I have. But I think it's such a weighty topic and a foundation that could change so much of humanity. So there's not just the practical matter of does it work? There's also the question of if it does work, what does that mean? And I love executives that really go out there and sort of interrogate their thoughts online.
Brilliant advice. So Keith O'Brien is a former journalist. He's a content strategist and ghostwriter at his own company called Total Emphasis. Keith, thanks so much for joining us here on Fired Up. If people want to get in touch with you, where should they go?
Probably LinkedIn is the best. Send me a connection, or my company website is the same as the name.com. So yeah, I'm not hard to find online.
All right. So Keith, thanks for your time. Nicole, thanks for joining us here. It was a great discussion and no doubt a topic that we'll be revisiting a lot more in future. Thanks you all for listening. Please follow us and drop us a comment, and we look forward to seeing you all again next week.